Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 9, Episode 20, The Puerto Rican Day. Hello everyone, I hope everyone's doing well out there. Most of all, I hope everyone is staying healthy. There's a lot of crap going around. I heard the term quademic on the news the other day, and it was actually the best news that was on the news the whole time I watched it, because the news is terrible. But our family was hit with the terrible norovirus over the last weekend. Started with my son. 2 days later, my husband and I, we literally started puking within an hour of each other. And then 2 days after we got sick, my daughter got sick. So it's made its way through the entire household. And it was not fun. I don't recommend it. I would really try to avoid it at all costs. The weekend started out awesome. It was Valentine's Day, and we went to, my husband and I, along with a couple other couples in our neighborhood, we went to what I call fake Depeche Mode, a cover band called Strangelove, the Depeche Mode Experience. They are a cover band out of LA, and they are extremely successful. And I learned why. It was such a fun show. First of all, I was a little skeptical, I'm not going to lie, because it was in my little suburban town here in Colorado. Not at a club, but like at a proper theater. So I'm going, how is this going to go? But it was sold out. And these guys are so dedicated to imitating Depeche Mode. They sounded incredible. The lead singer sounded exactly like Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, the lead singer of Depeche Mode. And he had all of his moves down. Dave Gahan, for those of you who might not know, have seen Depeche Mode, he's a very charismatic lead singer. I mean, you go to a Depeche Mode show, this man does not stop moving, getting the crowd into it. He is just the consummate rock star. And what was so just delightful about this show was that I kind of felt like I was seeing Depeche Mode in the 80s, when I was too young to see Depeche Mode. I was a fan in the 80s, believe it or not. I was pretty young to get into Depeche Mode, but I don't know. I think I was just an old soul when it came to new wave music. I should have been born 10 years earlier or something, but I was super into Depeche Mode in the 80s when I was like, it was weird. I was super into top 40 pop music, but then we had a family friend who's one of the daughters in that family. She was 4 years older than me, and she was very alternative. And so she would be listening to this music. And by the way, I worshiped her. So she would be listening to all of this British new wave music, Erasure, New Order, The Cure, Depeche Mode, Pet Shop Boys. Like, I just remember, because I always wanted to be around her whenever we visited, and she'd be playing all their music, and I just thought she was so cool. But I genuinely loved the music. I felt like an instant connection to that sound, and it hasn't stopped for a long time. And so anyway, when Depeche Mode was like around in the 80s and even early 90s, I was too young to kind of go to their concerts and become that kind of a fan who went to shows and stuff. I was simply too young. And so this band, Strangelove, when the lead singer comes out, he's dressed in the exact outfit Dave Gahan is dressed in when they're on the Concert for the Masses tour, for Music for the Masses, whatever. I'm boring the people who are not Depeche Mode fans, but the point is, it was a great experience. I felt like transported back via this cover band, but a cover band that, holy shit, talk about dedication, talk about just really loving what you do. They were so fun. They even spoke, like during the banter, they even spoke in British accents. I can't say for sure if they were real British accents. I'm not sure, but Nevertheless, I don't think they wanted to shatter the illusion. So even when they were just bantering on stage, telling us about, hey, follow us on social media or whatever, or tag us on your videos you're taking tonight, it was all in a British accent, like how Depeche Mode would sound because they're from East London. And like, it was really interesting. Anyway, really fun night. And then we get home and my son is on the couch, miserable. He's like, I think I have food poisoning. He had already vomited twice. Oh my gosh. And I was like, oh my God, please don't let it be norovirus. And we thought it was food poisoning because he recovered rather quickly. He was tired the next day, but we were kind of like, okay, I think that might have just been a one-off. But until 48 hours later, my husband and I were in separate bathrooms in our house doing the same thing. We knew this is not just food poisoning. And I was just bracing for when my daughter got it. She was the last one. On Monday night, she was going to bed and I said, how are you feeling? And she's like, I'm good. I'm totally good. And then cut to 5:30 in the morning, her coming to our room and telling us, I just threw up. And I'm like, oh God. So here we go with you. I will say, to have a little bit of a silver lining to all of this, it is so much easier to have kids old enough when they have these types of pukey diarrhea sicknesses. They can just go to the bathroom themselves, clean up after themselves, which both of my kids did. It's so much easier. When your kids have these types of illnesses, something like a stomach flu related illness, when they're in diapers or toddlers, or even a little older than toddlers, when they still, it's interesting. You have to learn the sensation of nausea. They don't know what that is when they're super young. They just know they feel awful. And before you know it, they're just puking in the middle of the room or in the car or wherever they are because they just don't know. But I was saying that to my husband. I'm like, I'm so thankful we don't have to sit next to them all night with a bowl and towels everywhere. Like it's a game changer. I would still not wish norovirus on anyone, but at the same time, I was very thankful that my kids are old enough now where they can take themselves to the bathroom. They do all the business in there. They clean up any unfortunate splashes. Sorry, everyone. Don't mean to gross you out. But this is how I am. You guys know, you only have 2 more episodes with me, so just bear with me. Anyway, so that was our terrible weekend. And it forced us to really have to rest and work through it. Anyway, like I said, I don't recommend it. I do not recommend getting the norovirus. So please avoid it. Wash your hands. Wear a mask when you're out there. Again, it's a quademic, everyone. I believe that consists of flu, COVID, norovirus, and I don't know what the 4th one is. Is it both the flus, A and B? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. Anyway, while I wasn't feeling well, I wanted to recommend this. And actually, Greg from Greg's Sack Lunch recommended this as well. I watched the SNL 50th anniversary. Well, I watched the special when I was nauseous in bed. But before that, Greg had recommended these 4 documentaries that they had done. It was a documentary series about SNL, and it's available on Peacock. I highly recommend it. If you guys are a fan of comedy, a fan of SNL, even if you're not a fan of SNL, it's still an institution, and it's so fascinating. I mean, the history of this show, 50 years, like no other show has been around for 50 years. It's pretty incredible. And so I highly recommend those. They kept me a little bit sane during my norovirus journey. And so I highly recommend it. And if this doesn't entice you enough, the second documentary in the series is a documentary completely dedicated to the cowbell sketch. We need more cowbell. That's all you need to know. It's over an hour long, and it's about that sketch. You will not be disappointed. Trust me. Okay, let's get into this episode. The synopsis for the Puerto Rican Day is as follows. The gang gets stuck in a traffic jam caused by the Puerto Rican Day Parade. George becomes the object of laser pointer ridicule. Jerry gets into a driving stalemate with another driver. Elaine tries and fails to make the trip on foot. Kramer is seen accidentally burning the Puerto Rican flag and is chased by an irate crowd of Puerto Rican Americans. This episode was written by, get ready, all of them, all of the writers: Alec Berg, Jennifer Crittenden, Spike Ferriston, Bruce Eric Kaplan, Greg Cavett, Stephen Corrin, David Mandel, Dan O'Keefe, Andy Robin, and Jeff Schaefer. Now, because Larry David wrote the last episode, the finale, I think Larry and Jerry, they decided to have all the writers work on the penultimate episode of Seinfeld. All right, we start out in Jerry's car. They're on the highway. All four of them are there. Elaine's sort of dozing in the back seat. George says how he's starving. Elaine opens her eyes. She leans forward. How can that be possible considering all he ate at the Mets game? Both Jerry and George say how eating at a ballpark really isn't eating. It's more of an activity. Like that paddle with the ball and the rubber band, which, Kramer informs them, Bob Sacamano made a fortune on because he came up with the idea of the rubber band. Jerry's kind of annoyed by them because they made him leave the game early. Elaine says, come on, Jerry, it was 9-0, and that the Mets were getting shellacked. George is in pain. He says the nachos are killing him. I thought you just said you were hungry, Elaine asks. It's complicated. Kramer points out how their exit's coming up, and Jerry's like, I got it. But then he's getting boxed out by a guy in a maroon Golf next to him. Kramer is trying to tell him when to go. Now, no, wait, no, now. It's not helpful at all. And then Jerry just makes a move and he pisses off maroon Golf. Kramer thinks they should moon him and he tells Elaine, come on, roll up your window. Let's do a pressed ham under glass. She's like, oh no, I couldn't do that. But then maroon Golf guy gives them the finger. She's like, all right. And she gets up to presumably moon him, but the scene ends before we see anything good. My take on this scene, we have all four of them together starting at the episode. What could be better? The conversation about George eating at the Mets game, it's so George, and a bit surprising, I think, that Jerry comes to his defense. I feel like this is an opportunity for Jerry to come down on George as well, but they both agree it's more of an activity. Eating at a ball game is really not eating. And in a weird way, I sort of get it. Well, listen, I have less than zero interest in baseball, but I'm so open to go to a game because of the ballpark food. You get a hot dog, nachos, popcorn. I mean, come on. In a weird way, I see what they're saying. It's part of the experience. It's an activity versus, oh, this is my meal. Like, no. You're supposed to be snacking on this stuff while you watch the game. Or in my case, while you pretend to watch the game and you're really just daydreaming because baseball is so boring. We get the setup for Jerry's plot here, the beef with maroon Golf. Okay, pressed ham under glass. It's one of my favorite phrases. I learned it on Seinfeld. I know it wasn't invented on Seinfeld, but I just find it so incredibly funny. And the way Kramer says it, pressed ham under glass. We say that a lot in this house. Not that we moon a lot, but if we somehow get in the vicinity of talking about mooning, or if even just ham comes up, or something pressed comes up, it has to be just one of the words. We'll just say pressed ham under glass. You can see Jerry break at the very end when Elaine is getting up to moon maroon Golf. I think that's so funny. All right, next we're in Jerry's car a little bit later. He's driving in the city now. George tells the group that he saw that movie about the Hindenburg. It's called Blimp, the Hindenburg story. And he said that he found it morose. Why dwell on these negative themes? Jerry's like, yeah, they should have made a movie about all the Hindenburg flights that made it. George did have a bright moment during the movie. He said the scene where the ship blows up and there's an eerie silence after it. There's debris on the airfield. He yells out in the theater, that's gotta hurt. And people went nuts. They laughed. Jerry's like, oh, imagine saying that at the actual crash. Kramer notices that they're slowing down and that there's some music playing and a bunch of flags. And then Elaine and Jerry realize at the same time it's the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Oh no, the city shuts down Fifth Avenue. Elaine says they're never getting home. Kramer stands up to check it out and we see a wide shot. He says, mucho tráfico. My take, we find out the backstory of what's to come for George, his zinger that got him the big laugh at Blimp. There's not much else. We arrive at the eponymous plot of the episode, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and they're stuck in a huge traffic jam. Next, we're on the street. Kramer hops into the car and says the streets are all blocked. I think every Puerto Rican in the world is out here. The driver of the car says, well, it is our day. Oops, Kramer is in the wrong car. He gets out apologizing. Back to Jerry's car. The Mets game is on the radio and the game is getting good. And Jerry's so annoyed. See, if we stayed, I could have seen those runs. George's stomach is still acting up and Elaine is distraught because she's going to miss 60 Minutes and she hates to miss 60 Minutes. It's part of her Sunday weekend wind down. Jerry does not get it. That ticking clock makes him anxious. Kramer gets back to the car. He tells them he scouted a way out. He points to a one-way street, but it's a few lanes away. And Jerry's like, I don't know if I can get over there. George says, you just worm your way over. Elaine says, just do it, Jerry. She's feeling queasy from all the exhaust fumes. She says, I'm going to throw up. Kramer suggests making herself throw up. You're going to do it anyway. Jerry's trying to get over, but the guy next to him is giving him the stare ahead, a move that Jerry both hates and does himself. George's hand is out to signal, but that's not enough. He says they're going to need a face. You sure you want his face? Elaine says. George starts yelling at the guy to look at him. I am you! The guy looks over and he focuses on Elaine smiling behind George, asking all flirty, can we get in? Elaine's face does the trick and he lets Jerry in and they're almost there, but then they get blocked by another car. The man says, oh, look who's here. My old buddy, Black Saab. It's none other than Maroon Golf. The guy is pretty amused. Where are you going? You seem a tad askew. Jerry asks him if he can move back a little. Sorry, he says, I seem to have cut you off. Elaine has no patience for this. She says, I see where this is going and I'm going somewhere else. She violently shoves the seat forward along with George and gets out. Jerry says, you can't do that. You can't just leave the group. Elaine says, I've been trying to leave this group for 10 years. Vaya con Dios. And she exits. Kramer thinks it's very rude that she said con Dios. George abandons the group as well because he sees a theater across the street playing Blimp. What, you're going to do that stupid line? Jerry asks. George explains it's a performance, like what you do. That's not what I do. Isn't it? I guess it is. George exits and Kramer leans forward to let Jerry know that he hasn't played a room that big in a while. My take on this scene, a lot happens here. It's a pretty long scene. In regards to 60 Minutes, my dad watched it religiously every Sunday night when I was growing up. And I agree with Jerry. Always bummed me out. I did not like the ticking clock. I mean, I was a kid. I thought it was a boring show. And it was also one of the signals that the weekend was almost over and I had to go back to school the next day. But I do enjoy this peek into Elaine's routine, her Sunday weekend wind down. I think that is very relatable to a lot of people. Not that you have to watch 60 Minutes for it, but I think everyone might have some kind of a mental cleansing they have to do at the end of the weekend. Prepare yourself for the oncoming week. So I really like how we see that this is part of Elaine's weekend wind down. Great, I have to say, great nauseous acting by JLD as someone who's just experienced this. I totally believe her. Also, I don't agree with Kramer about making yourself throw up. I could never. I hate it so much. I was reminded of that. I was having a Jerry moment after my first puke session where I was like, I honestly cannot remember the last time I threw up. Like, I don't know if it was 13 years like Jerry, that gap he had that was ruined by the black and white cookie. I know you all remember, but it had been a while. It had been a good while. I think maybe at least 10 years. I'm not a puker. I'm just not. I've been lucky, but I cannot even imagine making myself throw up, even through hours of being so uncomfortable and knowing I would feel better if I did throw up. I still couldn't do it. I contemplated it for like maybe 7 seconds. I was like, oh, like I feel so awful. My stomach. I'm like, God, maybe I should just stick my finger down my throat, but fuck no. Like, no, I can't do it. I just cannot do it. I just waited for hours, fell asleep for a little bit, woke up, felt like shit. I flipped over in the bed and then I was like, okay, here it is. There it is. That little shift did it. And then I felt some relief. I love that shot of Elaine behind George, smiling and flirting with the guy to allow them to cut in. Her face, I mean, you can't deny it. JLD's face it's a charming weapon, that's for sure. And finally, when she gets the hell out of the car, I just love it. That such a telling moment when she says, I've been trying to leave this group for 10 years. And I feel like it's even more poignant since this is the second to the last episode of the series. And it's not hard to believe. I've always gotten the sense Elaine wants to leave this group. She's known, and we've known, she could do so much better than being friends with these dummies. But they keep pulling her back in, man. I mean, she tried with Kevin and Bizarro World, but it didn't quite work out. I think because it was too far gone. She had become too much like the dummies to get out of the dummy circle. I was always curious about this, so I looked it up. Vaya con Dios translates to go with God, and it's a common phrase to say farewell. Con Dios is the part that means with God. So obviously Kramer didn't care for that religious portion of her goodbye. I always loved it, but I was like, why is he so offended by that? All right, next we're in a cab. Elaine this is her new way home. She's in the cab trying to get there. She's so bothered by a dog she is seeing. The ears are flipped inside out, and she's wondering, why doesn't the owner fix it? Finally, she yells out the window, "Hey! Fold your dog's ear back." She sits back. Oh, God. So frustrated that the traffic isn't moving. She says she could walk faster. No, you couldn't, the cabbie says, all offended. And she feels a bit challenged. Yes, she could. So she throws some money at him and she gets out. Of course, as soon as she gets out and starts walking, the traffic starts to move. So she rehails the cab and gets in. The guy says, "Where to?" Oh, that's cute. That's really cute. The cab is stuck again, and she's just beside herself. Come on. Okay, she throws a few more bucks at the guy and gets out. And then the cab starts cruising down the street, and Elaine is running beside it. Taxi! Rehailing it again. My take on this scene, it's a funny scene. The randomness of the dog's ear bugging Elaine is just, what the hell? Let's just throw that in there. I think it's also showing that when you're irritated about one thing, another slightly irritating thing is that much more elevated. I don't think if she was having a great day, the dog's ear would have bothered her. But this is the day where she's going to yell at the dog owner because she can't get home. 60 minutes is on the line. She can't wind down. So I think it's also a great example of that. When you're irritated about one thing, you see something, you're like, God damn it, fold your dog's ear back, you dumbass. And I'm in agreement with Elaine. I don't like when a dog's ear is flipped inside out. It looks kind of gross. It looks like I'm seeing like genitals or something. I'm like, yeah, put that away. Okay, this is something about this episode that has always baffled me. And I admit I do not live in New York City, so maybe this isn't possible, but I've always wondered, Elaine, why don't you take the subway? I don't know. I just feel like that's one of the most famous things in New York. They've taken the subway on other occasions. I would imagine there's a route to get you past Fifth Avenue, which seems to be the big hurdle here. But I don't know. I just feel like that's a really obvious thing that they don't address. I feel like they could have mentioned something to rule it out as an option. Perhaps, it's shut down or it's way too crowded. I don't know. Some mention of the subway so that we understand, okay, Elaine really has no choice here except to try and take a cab, try and walk. If any of you out there have a good solid reason as to why the subway was not an option, I would love to hear it. All right, next we're at the movies. George sits down in the theater and he lies to the ladies next to him and says, and I haven't seen this one before. One of the women notices a dot on the screen. It's one of those funny laser pointers, the other one says. We see a laser twirling over the actress's boobs on the screen and everyone starts laughing. Uh-oh, this is a challenge to George's comedy performance that will come later. He looks around and he sees the guy with the laser pointer. Then we cut to the concession stand. The laser guy orders some Skittles and an RC Cola using the laser pointer. George asks, "Are you the guy with that funny laser?" "The laser's not funny. I'm funny," he says. George asks if he could give him a little window during the explosion scene for a zinger that he wants to try. The guy really doesn't respond. He just stares at him. George walks away, but not before telling him that his aunt had something removed with a laser. Huh? Okay. The guy just really doesn't acknowledge anything George is saying. The actresses in this scene, the woman on the right in the movies, is played by Jenica Berger. She's also appeared on Modern Family, Grey's Anatomy, and 911, amongst other shows and movies. The other woman is played by Monica Allison. Now, this is her second appearance on Seinfeld. She also played the flight attendant in the doll episode in season 7. I think both women do a really good job. I like these characters and how they play into George's plot. And yeah, they're both great. I like their energy. All right, next we're in Jerry's car. He's still at a stalemate with Maroon Golf. He's listening to the game on the radio. Jerry really needs to see it. Oh, if only Maroon Golf would move. Kramer suggests just leaving the car and taking the plates off, scratch the serial number off the engine block, and walk away. And then you tell your insurance company that the car was stolen. Jerry and Kramer go back and forth about the details of what that is, and Jerry finally decides, I'm not leaving the car. Fine. Kramer says if you're not willing to scam your insurance company, the only other option is to work it out with Maroon Golf. No way, Jerry says. He's sped up. He hears more exciting Mets developments on the radio, and he says, I'm ready to talk. Back at the movie theater, the laser guy is back, and the ladies next to George are so amused. They both, at full volume during the movie, who cares, talk about how funny is so much more attractive to them than looks or hair. The explosion scene happens, and the laser's going nuts all over the screen. Everyone's laughing. George tries his line. That's gotta hurt. But there's crickets. He tries again. He fumbles it. Then he freaks out. Damn you, laser guy. You had to grab it all with your lowbrow laser shtick. Then the laser goes over to George. Hey, it's on the bald guy. Everyone starts laughing. We hear one of the ladies say, I'm so glad we came to this showing. I have to say, everyone in this theater is very patient with disruptions. I would not want to watch a movie with the laser pointer all over the screen. I wouldn't want women just talking at full volume about what they find attractive in a man, and then a dude freaking out and trying to yell out to the movie. I thought this was actually kind of funny. This was based on, I believe David Mendel had gone to see While You Were Sleeping, the Sandra Bullock movie. And during the movie, I guess Sandra Bullock, I think I've seen it once. I know people love that movie. It's not on my list of favorite rom-coms, but anyway, one of the lines Sandra Bullock says is, she asks the question, do you know what real love is? And apparently in that showing where David Mandel was, some guy yelled, yes! And it just cracked everyone up so much. And so he thought, okay, that's a really good, that's something that would bring George some joy if he could get a zinger at a movie. So I thought that backstory was actually very interesting. All right, next we are on the street. Kramer comes back to Jerry's car after speaking to Maroon Golf. He says to Jerry if he acknowledges that he cut him off with an I'm sorry wave, he will let Jerry pass. What's that? What's an I'm sorry wave? Kramer demonstrates. You raise the hand, lower the head. I'm sorry. The buttons are really big on this car. I don't understand it. I haven't read the manual. Oh! Jerry agrees, but he doesn't really do it the way Kramer does it. He puts both his hands up, very sarcastic, regretful face. Maroon Golf mocks it. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. But I'll take it. George returns from the theater at that point, gets back in the car. Jerry looks at him and says, something's on your forehead. It's probably chocolate, he says. No, it's the laser from the laser guy. Kramer says, hey, Jerry, crank up the Floyd. It's a George laserium. They're both laughing at him. George yells out to stop. Stay away from my breasts. Chest. Jerry starts to turn in front of Maroon Golf, but not before telling him that was actually an I'm not sorry wave and that Black Sob rules. So long, jackass. And he goes to turn, but then Elaine's cab pulls up and blocks him. Maroon Golf smirks at Jerry. Jackass. So I'm a jackass now. Next, before we're on the street, we get a quick shot of Jerry's apartment. There's no one in it. Then on the street, Jerry is trying to coordinate everyone on the one-way street to back up on the count of 3. Hey, amigo, are you paying attention? This Puerto Rican guy greets Jerry. He says, "No, not you, the guy in the Amigo." We cut to the cab and Elaine tells the cabbie, "Okay, this is good." "Oh, sure." He's all pissed off. "You're going to leave me stuck here. You knew where to go. You went to college." She gets in his face. "Hey, I went to Tufts. It was my safety school. So don't talk to me about hardship." She gets out of the cab, walks up to Jerry. She says, "Can you believe this mess?" Jerry's so pissed at her. "Why did you make your cab come down this street? You knew we were trying to get out." Maroon Golf finds this really funny. "So it was your girlfriend who blocked you in." Elaine tells him, "No, I'm not his girlfriend. Well, actually, we used to date." Jerry's like, "Elaine, he doesn't need to know this." "Oh, used to date. So I guess you found out he was a jackass." Elaine smiles and nods. George and Kramer return from getting churros, and the laser is still on George's face. He's giving him a mustache now. Kramer wants to know, where is this guy? "Don't look around," George says. That's just what he wants. Elaine says goodbye again and goes to leave, but then looks at George and the laser. "Hey, George, I think there's a sniper looking to pop you." And she exits. George wonders if the laser could hurt him. It is a laser. What if it gets in my eye? Jerry's like, "I don't know. Can't be blind, Jerry. The blind are courageous." Kramer somehow knows he'll be fine as long as a laser doesn't hit him directly in the pupil. Otherwise, it'll blow up like the Death Star. All right, he needs to go find a bathroom. So Kramer exits. Jerry tells George not to move. The laser's right between his eyes. Then Jerry gets distracted by the soda guy. He leaves George frozen with the laser between his eyes. Maroon Golf asks Jackass Jerry for a Diet Dr. Pepper. All right. My take on this scene. Okay, so we learned that Elaine went to Tufts University, which, if you were wondering, is in Massachusetts. It's pretty tough to get into. I'm not surprised that Elaine went there, considering her 151 IQ. Some notable graduates from Tufts includes Meredith Vieira, Michelle Kwan, and Hank Azaria. For the longest time, I never understood what safety school meant, but apparently it's not your first choice. It's the school you'll get into. So maybe it's your second or your third choice, but it's certainly not your first choice, which is why Elaine probably got choked up here because it was her safety school. It's not where she wanted to go. I wonder what Elaine's first choice was. That's something to think about. Or probably not. Why think about it? I do always appreciate how Elaine never passes up a chance to correct someone if they think she and Jerry are a couple. Totally on brand for her also to be amused by Maroon Golf calling Jerry a jackass. I love how she's like, "Oh, yes." And of course, Elaine can't pass up a moment to mock George. And the sniper comment is fun. A little micro Benestanza moment. All right, next we are on the street. Elaine is trying to cross the street, but it's blocked off everywhere. And a group of, other white folks are saying they're all trapped too. And then Elaine spots a flap under the bleachers and says, "Hey, I think we can get out through here." Well, there's some doubt among the group, but she says, "Listen, there's no telling how long this parade would last, and that the Puerto Ricans are a very festive people." She says, "Look, all I know is it's Sunday night and I have got to unwind. Now, who's with me?" This older woman turns to the priest and says, "Father," and he admits that, Elaine seeing the nylon flap could mean something. So Elaine opens it and starts escorting the folks through one by one. One of the guys says, "It's dark." "Get in there." She pushes him in. The actress who says, "Father," is Mimi Cousins. She plays that older woman. She has also appeared in Days of Our Lives, The Golden Girls, The Mindy Project, and many others. And I think she's great. This entire group of guest actors are very funny. And my take on the scene, we're on to the next phase of Elaine's plot. She's trying to escape under the bleachers. I think it's funny. I think it's something different. I always enjoy, they are a very festive people. I do like that moment of asking the priest, "Father." Okay, so I read that apparently this is a take on the Poseidon Adventure, a movie I have not seen, but apparently this is kind of a parody of that. This is supposed to mirror the dangers of trying to escape. And the guy saying, "It's dark." It always makes me laugh. Elaine has no time for that bullshit. "Get in there." She just pushes him in. And that man was actually played by Mark Hirschfeld, the casting director for Seinfeld. All right, next we're on a street again. Kramer's trying to find a bathroom. He sees a sign that bathrooms are for patrons only, but right next to that, he sees a sign for an apartment on sale, and he decides to go in there. The realtor lets him in, and he introduces himself as A.G. Pennypacker. He's trying to come off as this character, a very wealthy industrialist, a philanthropist, and a bicyclist. He really rounds out his character, telling her how he needs a place to settle down with his peculiar habits and the women that he frequents. And he assumes that there's a waterfall grotto. No, she says. How about a bathroom? There are 4, apparently. Where would the absolute nearest one be? She points down the hall, and Kramer scurries to use the crapper. The actress in this scene is Helen Carey. She plays the realtor, Christine Neihart. Some of her credits include Julie and Julia, Law and Order, and The Good Wife. And I like her a lot. There's not a ton to her character here, but she's got a nice smile and a great presence. All right, next we're under the bleachers. Elaine is helping the people get through. A pregnant woman is one of them, and Elaine says, "Don't worry, we'll get you back home to your husband very soon." "I'm not married," the woman says. Wow, Elaine tells her she really respects that. She walks on by. Then Elaine tells the couple after the pregnant woman, "Guess who's not married?" Oh, is the boyfriend still in the picture? The man wants to know. Elaine's like, "I don't know." The priest is having a hard time. He sits down. She says, "Come on, Father, you can make it." "Nope, he's got a bad hip. Go on without me." "Oh, I won't." "You must." All right. Elaine tells him to take it easy. Elaine walks on, telling the rest of the group, "We can move faster without Father O'Gimpy." "I heard that." The actress in this scene, the pregnant woman, is played by Allison Martin. She's also appeared in Mad About You, Desperate Housewives, Grace and Frankie, and many other shows. And I like her. I think she does a great job. My take on the scene, I think it's really funny. The two-faced, shady-ass Elaine, but hilarious. Guess who's not married? What a bitch. That face she makes afterwards, too. She's like, "Oh, I got some tea." I mean, an under-bleacher escape when you're filthy, it doesn't stop gossip. Are you kidding me? And yes, Elaine would abandon the priest that she convinced to walk under the rickety bleachers. Of course she would. She would have no regrets. So perfect. All right, next we're on the street. We're back at Jerry's car, and George walks up with sunglasses, the reflective kind that cops wear. He tells Jerry they're for protection. "Can you see where I'm looking?" "At me?" "No." The laser is back on George's face, but George is not scared now that he has his sunglasses on. But then Jerry points out, what if it gets into the side? Wouldn't it just bounce back and forth between your cornea and the mirror, faster and faster, getting more and more intense? George removes the glasses in a panic. "Oh, it's in your eye now, George." And George freaks out and runs away. Kramer comes back with a Puerto Rican flag. He's really getting into the spirit of the parade. It's caliente, Jerry. Also tells Jerry how he was watching the game. Where? Then we cut to Jerry at the luxury apartment watching the game, and the realtor thinks he is Kel Varnson, and she tells him that he should know a wealthy industrialist is also interested in the apartment. Jerry plays along, "Not Pennypacker," and he tells the realtor she's in for an all-out bidding war. Next, we're back at Jerry's car. George is looking through the rearview mirror and he thinks he sees the laser guy. Oh yeah, that's him. And George says he's going to go sneak up on him. Now the hunted becomes the hunter. We're back under the bleachers next. Everyone is filthy. Elaine gets a soda spilled on her. She's got popcorn and candy in her hair. And then she announces to the group how they're at the end. They can get out past this flap. But then she opens it and it's a brick wall. It's a dead end. And the scared guy tells her, "I knew it. We're going to die in the dark. I knew it." She grabs him. "Get a hold of yourself." They tussle, and then that leads to them kissing. And everyone groans. They're like, "Oh, God, stop." They do stop, and Elaine apologizes. Elaine starts pounding on the seat above her. "Somebody help us." The guy sitting enjoying the parade notices them. "There's people down there." He lifts up a wood board and reveals them. Elaine says, "Let us out. There's an unmarried pregnant woman down here." "Don't judge me," she says. Love that. Elaine asks, "Help us up so we can cross the street." There's a cop there. He says, "No, you can't cross here. It's a parade." "But we've come so far. We just want to unwind." "What can I tell you?" They let down the wood board. Ugh, the group is so defeated. And scared guy asks Elaine, "You want to make out some more?" "Oh, God, let us out." My take on this scene, I think it's fun. Like I mentioned briefly earlier, I love that we have this group of guest actors with Elaine. They're all so great. They all play off of each other really well. What a treat. What a treat for these actors to be in a really kind of poignant episode in the sense it's a second to the last episode of Seinfeld, the last regular episode of Seinfeld, and they have a pretty significant part. I think it was a really good decision to have Elaine with just a group of strangers. And so funny to have this play at like some desperate escape. Like I said, apparently a parody of the Poseidon Adventure, complete with some misplaced passion as if they'll never make it out, so they may as well make out. I've always enjoyed how the guy says, "There's people down there." I like that actor. He's very cute. It's just all around entertaining scene. You can just feel the desperation. Elaine is at the end of her rope. All right, next we're on the street. George is scoping a guy who's standing by a van, sees him holding a pen-like object, and then he ambushes him. He takes and breaks the object, and it turns out it's a regular pen. He gets ink all over his hands and says, "That wasn't a laser pen." The guy says, "No, it was just a pen." Then the laser reappears on George's head and the guy starts laughing. "Oh, you think that's funny? No, you got like a dot on your face. Whoever's doing that is very clever." That's something we say a lot too. You got like a dot on your face. I love that. Love the way the guy says that. Next, back at Jerry's car, Kramer is telling Maroon Golf he needs to lighten up, get into the spirit of the parade, change his mood. He says this as he's lighting a cigar with a firecracker for whatever reason. He accidentally tosses the firecracker onto the Puerto Rican flag in the Saab behind him. Maroon Golf starts laughing because the flag is on fire. Kramer notices the flag. He takes it onto the sidewalk. He's trying to extinguish it by flinging it down, stepping on it, and someone yells out, "There's a guy burning the Puerto Rican flag!" Then we cut to our old friends, Cedric and Bob, the robbers of Elaine's armoire. They turn around. Who is burning the flag?" They walk over to Kramer, who tries to tell them it was an accident. But of course, they don't believe him. They get very aggressive, asking him, "Do you know what day this is?" And then Bob suggests maybe we should stomp on you the way that you stomped on the flag. Kramer says, "Okay, I only have one thing to say to you. Mama!" And he runs away, and they run after him. We're back at the luxury apartment. George has arrived as Art Vandelay, of course. His hands are in his pockets. He definitely needs to wash all that ink off. She directs him to the bathroom down the hall, and on his way, he sees Jerry sitting there. "Oh, Mr. Vandelay, of course. You two know each other?" And then Kramer busts in, escaping the mob of Puerto Ricans chasing him. He gets into his pennypacker character and then freezes when he sees Jerry and George in there as well. But Jerry is concerned, asking who is watching the Saab factory, since they're all in the apartment. Of course, referring to who's watching his car on the street. Kramer doesn't quite get it. "Jerry, that's in Sweden?" And Jerry runs to the window and sees a bunch of people vandalizing his car. Kramer says it's like this every day in Puerto Rico. George comes over. The Mets lost. I love a parade. Then we have a tag to the episode. We're in the street. It's later. The parade is over. It's nighttime now. And Jerry's car is literally in a stairwell. The guys are just pondering, how did they manage to do that? Kramer suggests, "All right, let's go home." "Well, what about my car?" "Well, Jerry, you can't deduct it now." Elaine walks up looking just filthy and terrible. "Wow, you look relaxed." "Well, it is Sunday night, and you know how I like to unwind." Maroon Golf drives up. "Hey, Black Saab, looks like that building cut you off. See you around." And then he drives off. "Well, at least he didn't call me." And then we hear off camera, "Jackass." Jerry locks the car and says, "Somebody remember where we parked." My take, it's nice when all four regroup at the end. Really, really terrible day for everyone. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. Despite what the Google Calendar, our current administration, or your racist family member says, February is still Black History Month. Now, I grew up in a very racist white suburb of Detroit, and I heard it all when it came to hate towards the Black community. Many times these comments were made by kids my own age, but a lot of times I would hear their parents express very racist beliefs in front of me and excusing my non-whiteness by saying, "Oh, you're fine, you're not Black." Though, believe me, I'm sure the damn foreigner rant started up after my parents picked me up. For those of you like me who witnessed racism against Black folks but never quite knew how to react or speak up, I have a few tips that won't cost you a dime. First of all, speak up. That is a non-negotiable. You have to say something. You have to. You can't let someone say something racist and let it fly by because, oh, there are no black people around. No, say something. And I understand that may sound daunting, but I saw a video that I thought was fantastic by the Instagram account Racial Equity Insights. All one word, Racial Equity Insights. I highly recommend following them. And there was a video posted, and it was tips on how to respond to something racist. So here are some responses you can say. Number 1, so when and why did you start believing that? Number 2, yeah, I'm going to have to stop you right there. Number 3, how is the person's race relevant to that story? Number 4, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but what evidence do you have to support that belief? Number 5, that hasn't been my experience with insert racial group here. Number 6, what experience have you had that gave you that opinion? Number 7, tell me more about what you meant by that comment. Number 8, you cannot say things like that around me. Number 9, that sounded pretty racist. Number 10, I don't get it. Can you explain to me why that joke is funny? And number 11, wow. A lot of progress is being dismantled and will continue this way in the near future. Racists are feeling so empowered by a racist administration who lies to them and tells them equality is a threat to their livelihood. And spoiler alert, it is not. Support for the Black community cannot only be within the Black community, but also those of us who don't have to endure the hate ourselves. Speak up whenever you hear a racist spouting their garbage beliefs. Silence is validation. Being a racist. What a boner killer / vagina dryer. And we're back. Okay, the extras I've kind of peppered throughout the episode. So we're going to move on to Greg's sack lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor. Every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. Well, this week, Greg didn't have the time, but he did send us a teeny tiny sack. So I will share what he said. He said his overall thoughts about the Puerto Rican Day. I never really liked this episode. As much as I love a storyline with all 4, this was just too out there for me. I'd have preferred Elaine stick with the other 3 the whole time so we can get more banter amongst them. This is up there with the LA episodes as the ones I've sort of liked the least of the series. Fair, very fair, Greg. I definitely have similar thoughts, which I'll get to in a little bit, but totally fair. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's such a out there episode, but I don't know if it got the payoff that they were hoping for. Thank you, Greg. Even the smallest sack is still a delightful sack. So we will close Greg's teeny tiny sack lunch. All right, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. I like when she takes charge by that nylon flap. They are a very festive people. I've got to unwind. And then telling that scared guy, get in there. I love that part. And a close second is when she loses it under the bleachers. Oh God, let us out. And my final notes for the episode. It's a classic yet controversial episode. Many of you out there probably know that NBC had to issue an apology after this episode aired due to the reaction of the Puerto Rican American population. They took offense, great offense, to the burning of the flag and also the negative portrayals of Puerto Ricans. You know, they're vandalizing the car at the end and Kramer says every day is like this in Puerto Rico. So just all around pretty negative portrayal of Puerto Ricans. But I think the burning of the flag, stomping the flag, that was the most offensive. So it's not shown very often in syndication. I know it was pulled from syndication for a few years, but from what I understand now, they do still show it, but it's very minimal. And they also cut out the flag burning scene. For me personally, I am so neutral about this episode. I like that it feels very balanced as far as all the main 4 characters' story spread. I don't feel like one storyline gets more than the other. So it's really well balanced. So I like that. I always like that in any episode where it's very even. Elaine's plot, I'll say pretty good. Trying to escape through the bleachers. It's funny. I like the change in scenery. And as I said, I do enjoy those guest actors and how Elaine is the leader of the group. And I always love more Benestanza, but I do think having Elaine completely separate makes sense, especially when she confesses, hey, I've been wanting to leave this group for 10 years. She's not fucking sticking around. Why would she sit in the car with these idiots the whole time. No, she has the option to leave. She's going to leave. I see what you're saying, Greg. Oh, it would have been funnier just to keep the banter. But I think we would be wondering, like, why doesn't Elaine just fucking leave? Like I said earlier, my bigger beef with the episode is, why didn't she take the subway? I do like George's plot with the laser pointer abuse, bullying, whatever you want to call it. And it's all fine to me. It's nothing great. I do appreciate the creativity of it all, not using the usual sets. They show Jerry's, I think it's very clever how they show Jerry's apartment, but we're not there. They're not in Monks. So I like that they switched it up here and we got to experience things elsewhere with the main four. But like I said earlier, I'm not sure it really has the payoff maybe that they were hoping for. It's just fine. And I think that's all I can say about the Puerto Rican day. Okay, guys, finale. That's all that's left. I'm not going to cover the clip episode. I don't think there's really a point to that. But I will be taking 2 weeks for preparation for the last episode, for the finale. I'm trying to think of maybe some fun things that I can include for the last episode. It will be a supersized episode, so I'm not going to split it up into part 1 or part 2. I'm going to go out with a very long bang. That sounded very inappropriate, but you know what I mean. Going out with the bang and it's going to be extra long. Okay, I'm going to stop now. But yes, so look for the finale episode in a couple of weeks. And I so look forward to wrapping up this super fun podcast that I've dedicated my life to for the last 3 years. What a thrill. What a ride. And I hope you guys tune in. And thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to follow Hot and Heavy on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for all of the support. Thank you for listening. And for the last time, I will see you next time.